And we're live. Welcome back or welcome to the Truth Comes to Light podcast, where everything done in the dark is going to come to light. Every single detail in this world that is done in the dark is going to come to light. I'm your host, J Coven, and welcome to the show. For those of y'all that are new, on the Truth Comes to Light podcast, we talk about news from all over the world, the music industry, and more. Please be sure to check out my previous podcast episodes on the channel, and also please be sure to tune in to Real Spill Wednesdays. On Real Spill Wednesdays, we talk about life topics and motivational quotes. Please be sure to tune in to Real Spill Wednesdays if you are interested. Please be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you get the latest updates on when I post a full Real Spill Wednesday or a full podcast episode. All of those videos are coming out real soon. Also, please be sure to follow me on IG, TikTok, and X at The Truth Comes to Light podcast, because who knows, whatever I post on one of those social media platforms is like a foreshadow on what I will be talking about for the next podcast or Real Spill Wednesday episode. But if you're not following any one of those social media platforms, you will be missing out on a whole lot of things. I was tweeting yesterday, as I'm recording this video, I was tweeting yesterday about the topics that we are going to be talking about for this full podcast episode. And I want y'all to engage with me. I want y'all to feel as though y'all are able to talk to me. Y'all can engage with me. I don't know about how all these other podcasters be, but I want y'all to feel like y'all can engage with me. We could go back and forth on the social media platforms. And even if some topics don't make it to the podcast episodes or the Real Spill, we can just talk about it on the social media platforms if I post it on the social media platforms. But I want y'all to engage with me nonetheless. So please be sure to follow me on those social media platforms. First Real Spill of 2024, y'all. I'm really excited for what's to come for this year. Got a Real Spill coming out for y'all this Wednesday, so please be sure to tune in to that Real Spill Wednesday, the first Real Spill Wednesday of 2024 as well. We're staying consistent. We are over 170 videos. I really appreciate each and every one of y'all that have liked the video, comment, subscribe, did everything y'all could to support the channel. Y'all keep on engaging with the channel, liking, sharing, doing whatever y'all can. I'm going to come with the content every single chance that I get, because I love each and every one of y'all. I don't know what's in store for 2024, but I want 2024 to be a good year, not only for me, but for y'all. So with that in mind, let's get straight into this podcast episode, the first podcast episode of 2024. Y'all loved the sports podcast. I just recently did that last month in December of 2023, and y'all really showed love to the sports podcast. Y'all really liked when I was talking about sports, and that was like my first time talking about sports for, the podcast. Normally I was just talking about the news from all over the world, but I decided to incorporate sports into my podcast because I want to make my podcast more diverse. I want to talk about more things. So I felt as though let's try out sports and see where it goes. And y'all made those videos my most viewed videos, my most liked videos, and I really thank each and every one of y'all. So we're back with the sports. And there has been a whole lot of topics going on in the sports world. As y'all can see, I have my Alabama beanie on, and we're going to get straight into the college football playoff games. Both of them, shall we? Alabama loses a heartbreaker to Michigan in overtime, 27-20 in the college football playoff semifinal, the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. Michigan advances to the championship game in Houston, where they will be playing Washington, which we will be talking about that game after this game. Jalen Milroe, 16 of 23, 116 yards. Didn't throw a single touchdown, one fumble loss, which we will be talking about a little bit later. Jace McClellan, 14 carries, 87 yards, had 2 TDs. Justice Haynes, the true freshman, ended up coming in the game later down the line with 4 carries for 31 yards, really brought in some energy for the Alabama offense. Isaiah Bond was their leading receiver with 4 receptions for 47 yards, followed by Jermaine Burton with 4 receptions for 21 yards, especially one of the receptions in overtime. And yeah, Jalen Milroe also had 21 carries for 63 yards. He was running the ball a lot. But Michigan was stopping that. And we're going to talk about that. J.J. McCarthy had a better game than Jalen Milroe. 17 of 27 for 221 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also had 3 carries for 25 yards, especially one big time run later in the game for a first down. Blake Corum also had a pretty good game. 19 carries, 83 yards, 2 total TDs, 1 on the ground and 1 receiving the ball. Leading receiver was Roman Wilson with 4 receptions for 73 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Morris also had 2 receptions for 45 yards and 1 TD. The Michigan defense also had 6 total sacks, and they had 5 sacks in the first half, which is the most sacks allowed under the Nick Saban era at Alabama. We're going to talk about this game. For the casual people that aren't rooting for either one of these teams, just want to look at some good football, Alabama and Michigan was the right game to watch. A tale of literally 2 halves. The first half, it was just straight dominance by Michigan. Alabama was getting punched in the mouth the whole entire first half. Second half, they made adjustments, and they had all the momentum going in the fourth quarter. All of the momentum. Michigan fumbling the ball early in the game off of a muff punt, causing Alabama to get Jace McClellan involved to get a touchdown to strike first blood, making it 7-0. And then you had Alabama fumbling the ball in the fourth quarter when they had all the momentum. They just scored a touchdown and stopped Michigan. Jalen Milroe ended up fumbling the ball, causing Michigan to kick a field goal, which they ended up missing. And that really could have struck some damage to Alabama. And turns out it did, because they had all of the momentum. You score the ball after getting punched in the mouth the whole entire first half. The offensive line really sold Alabama. The offensive line was sucking the whole entire game. But the first half, you just can't allow 5 sacks. You can't allow 5 sacks and kill drives. And that's what they were doing. The Michigan defense was playing very good coverage down the field. And Alabama, with them allowing 5 sacks, that was one of the problems. And number 2 is bad play calling. You can't, if your offensive linemen cannot block these big defensive linemen, big nose tackles that Michigan have, you don't have time to run deep crossers, all these long crossing patterns, these long developing plays, and expect to have good success. Jalen Milroe's not going to have time for that. And you saw it time and time again. They were running these long developing plays, and Jalen Milroe was getting sacked because he didn't have no pressure. Jalen Milroe played okay. Did he play better than J.J. McCarthy? No, he didn't play better than J.J. McCarthy. But that offensive line killed drives. They killed drives, especially after Alabama scored a field goal, and then they get the ball back in the third quarter, and they're driving down the field. And I want y'all to look at this. I really want y'all to look at this. So it's 2nd down and 2. Before this play, Justice Haynes, like I said, ran the ball for a first down. True freshman brought a burst to the Alabama offense. And then it's 2nd down and 2. And Jace McClellan, here it goes, runs, 2nd down and 2, gets a first down. So you see all the momentum. And this is after Alabama kicked a field goal to make it 10-13 going into halftime. They really wanted to get a touchdown that drive, but it was a good drive. It was one of the best drives that they had the entire game. And Will Riker kicks a field goal to make it 10-13. So now they have all the momentum going into the third quarter. So then after that, they start driving. They start running the ball. And like you saw, Jace McClellan ran for a first down. So now it's 1st down and 10. 1st down and 10. We're on Michigan's 48-yard line. 48-yard line. And I want y'all to just look. Milroe's not even looking at the ball. Why is the ball getting snapped? 1st down and 10. So now you're on Alabama's territory. Now you're back in your own territory. And now you see all of the miscommunication, and he's getting mad. He's getting frustrated. And it's back-to-back low snaps. Back-to-back low snaps, and Jalen Milroe couldn't corral the ball. Now, did some of it go on Jalen Milroe a little bit, but most of it goes on that offensive line, and that was a drive killer. Who knows what could have happened? They were driving. They had all the momentum, driving all the way down the field. Who knows? They could have got a field goal by Will Riker because he was automatic. He was keeping them in the game. The punter was keeping them in the game by field position. That's how it was in the second half, because that Alabama defense was killing. Alabama defense was cooking in the second half. They weren't playing that well in the first half, but they made adjustments in the second half. And besides that last drive to make it go into overtime, they were playing good. But the first half, Michigan was running all of these crossing patterns and all of these routes to cause miscommunication between the Alabama defense and the Alabama secondary. And that's just straight coaching right there. Second half, they picked it up. They adjusted to what Michigan was doing, and they stopped them all the way until the end. That last drive by J.J. McCarthy, that was a great drive. That was a gutsy fourth down play. And for Harbaugh to have confidence in his offense with 3 timeouts. They had 3 timeouts, so they easily could have punted the ball and stopped them because they were stopping them pretty much the whole game. But he decided to roll the dice, and he made J.J. McCarthy go get a first down, passing it to Blake Corum out the backfield, and they got a first down. And then after that, they ended up scoring the touchdown. But other than that, in the second half, Alabama was playing really, really good defense. And I want y'all to see this play. This is what I was talking about in regards to momentum. So we stop them in the third quarter. That was their last drive in the third quarter, and Alabama gets the ball back, and you see that they're driving down the field. It's the beginning of the fourth quarter. 2nd down and 15, power play by Jalen Milroe to get all the way down to the goal line. The next play after that, they give the ball to Jace McClellan, and he obviously takes it in. So now they have all the momentum in the quarter. They're up 17-13, and after that, they stopped Michigan. Then they get the ball back. I want y'all to look at this. Let me get it on the screen for y'all. So here it goes right here. If you're Jalen Milroe, you cannot have the ball facing the defender. That's an easy strip. That's an easy play for the defender. And that was a good play by the Michigan defender to cause Jalen Milroe to fumble that ball. If you stop him and you put it in your left arm and you slide or just give yourself up, you have a next play. You have another play to live. You get what I'm saying? You have another play to live. Who knows what could happen? It was 1st down and 10. You still got 3 more plays to get a first down. You could have got a field goal that drive. But luckily, Alabama's defense, they stopped Michigan, caused them to attempt the field goal, and they ended up missing it. Then Alabama didn't. They kicked a field goal to make it 20-13. But imagine on that drive if they would have scored a touchdown. If they would have scored a touchdown instead of getting sacked, and that was their only sack. Keep in mind, Michigan had 5 sacks in the first half. They finished off with 6 total sacks. They only had 1 sack the entire second half, but that sack came critical because if Alabama kicks that field goal, they make it 20-13. They make it a 1-possession game. Versus if they score a touchdown, they make it 24-13 with around 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Now, that's still a lot of time because Michigan still had 3 timeouts. Keep that in mind. But you have you're more comfortable. You have a more comfortable lead. 2-possession game instead of a 1-possession game, and they can just drive all the way down the field, and now time isn't on Alabama side. Because who knows if they would have scored a touchdown later, who knows, they could have possibly ended it then. They could have scored 2, and they could have ended it right then and there. Who knows? But Michigan was straight dominant. Their defense was dominant. Alabama made adjustments, and we're going to go straight into the overtime call by Alabama. It's a 4th down and 4. 4th down and goal from the 4-yard line. Everybody on the Michigan defense knows that the ball is going to Jalen Milroe. Everybody knows this, and I want y'all to just look at this. You see pre-snap, everybody is loading the box. Everybody is loading the box. Michigan called like 20 timeouts. Alabama called like 20 timeouts. And this is the play that you come up with everybody loading the box. With everybody loading the box, that's the play you come up with, Bill O'Brien. That's the play you come up with. A predictable call. Everybody on Michigan's defense, they knew that Milroe was getting the ball on 4th down and goal. They knew that the wide receivers weren't getting the ball. They knew that the running back wasn't going to get the ball. They should have at least gave it to the running back, but you can't run up the middle against Michigan. They got too many people on that nose tackle. Too many people with big meat, pause, on the nose tackle. And they were getting destroyed the entire game. In between the gaps, they were getting destroyed the whole entire game. But if you run on the outside like they were doing in the second half, you were having more to gain. You were having more to gain. Versus if you're just running up the middle. There were a couple times where they were able to run up the middle, but most of the time they couldn't. And that was so predictable. You could have at least did a pass play. You could have at least ran it a little bit to the outside. But on 4th down and 4, after calling 30 timeouts, that's the play you come up with. And Nick Saban said that there were 3 different plays for all of the timeouts. I don't know I just can't believe that. I felt like they were going to give the ball to Jalen Milroe, and they were going to let Jalen Milroe try and make the play. If you're going to make Jalen Milroe make the play, just don't have him just run up the middle where the offensive line was getting beat the entire game. You can't have that happen. That play wasn't going to work from the jump. And shout out to Michigan for scoring in 2 plays. Blake Corum going all the way down the field. Both runs were good runs for first downs. Great runs for first downs. Running hard, and they ended up scoring a touchdown. J.J. McCarthy, great drive. Great 4th quarter drive. Alabama got outcoached. Alabama got flat out outcoached by Michigan. They did. Even though Alabama made adjustments in the second half, overall, Michigan outcoached them. The players played better. The quarterback play was better. The running game was better. And Michigan came out with the W. Michigan flat out came out with the W. And Alabama, with this team, it being a rebuilding year, this wasn't Alabama's best team. This wasn't Nick Saban's best team. The fact that they even made it this far and they made this game a good game. Usually in the college football playoffs, you have some games, you have one semifinal game where it's flat out good. Except for last year, obviously, with Michigan and TCU and Georgia and Ohio State. Both of those games were very good. But the ones in the past, Notre Dame versus Alabama, Cincinnati versus Alabama, Michigan State versus Alabama, you'll have a game where it's just flat out trash. Flat out trash. So for both of these games to be good for a casual person that just want to look at football, this was very good picking by the committee. If Florida State was in here without their starting quarterback, they would have got blitzed. Probably 28-0, 30-7. You know, it would not have been a good matchup. But the fact that they put the 4 best teams in the playoffs and both of these games were good. We knew with the Michigan and Alabama game, it wasn't going to be a shootout type of game, but Alabama wasn't going to get blitzed and Michigan wasn't going to be blitzed. They were both going to put up some points. It was going to be some sort of smash mouth football, and whoever had the ball last was going to win the football game. That's what I personally thought. Whoever had the ball last was going to win a football game. But the play call by Alabama in overtime was a bad play call. Michigan flat out outcoached them. Harbaugh outcoached Saban. The play calling was bad. If you're Alabama, you can just look at this season and is the era over? No, I don't think the era's over in Nick Saban coaching Alabama and winning championships. I don't think that it's over. But you got to get some game changers on your team. Milroe is a game changer. I've always said that about Milroe. He's a game changer. The moment Milroe can read coverages and read pre-snap, he will be dominant. Usually with your athletes, your quarterback that are athletes, your Jalen Milroes, your Lamar Jacksons, your Jalen Hurts, when they first come into college, they're not good at reading coverages. But once they learn how to read coverages, learn how to read pre-snap motion, read pre-snap defense, once they learn that, and get to their options instead of staring one receiver down, and if that receiver isn't open, they're going to run and take off, they're dominant. You see it with Lamar Jackson at Baltimore. You see it with Hurts if you compare what Hurts is looking like right now in Philadelphia versus what he was looking like at Alabama. He would stare down Calvin Ridley, and if he wasn't open, he's running the football. So it's the same with Jalen Milroe. All Jalen Milroe can do is look at this game. You could tell that he had heart in this game. You could tell that he had heart. But he got to learn how to read coverages. He got to learn how to read pre-snap. A person like Bryce Young would have killed this team. A person like Tua would have killed this team because they know how to read coverages and they know how to read pre-snap. Not saying that Michigan didn't play good defense at all, but I feel as though Bryce Young and Tua would have already dissected what was going on before the play was even snapped. It seemed as though they didn't. Bryce Young was pretty much playing with the same offensive line. And it kind of sucks that Jalen Milroe is kind of working with this offensive line and how bad they have been, and they have been bad pretty much the whole season. This isn't the first time where the center has been not good in games. The game against Auburn, he wasn't good. And if it wasn't for Jalen Milroe coming in clutch, Alabama wouldn't even be in this position. But he's got to read the coverages. And the play calling's got to be better. You can't run long, progressing plays against a team if they can rush the passer. If Jalen Milroe doesn't have time, why are we running deep crossers down the field? Where's your in routes? Where are your out routes? Where are your slant routes? Where are your drag routes? Where are your intermediate routes? You're not going to have time to run a deep ball, a deep play. Michigan was locking that up. And that front four was getting home. And when they sent pressure, they got to Jalen Milroe every single time. That offensive line couldn't do nothing in the first half against Michigan. And that's all credit to Michigan. That's all credit to the defensive coordinator. That's all credit to them. That's all credit to them. But if you look next year, I feel as though if they can get the right recruits, if they can get that O-line correct, Alabama's going to always be in it. Next year is a 12-team playoff race instead of a 14 playoff race. All you got to do if you're Alabama is don't lose more than 2 games. If you lose more than 2 games, it's going to be hard for you to get into the top 12, the college football playoffs. It's not a you lose 1 game and you're out. Now it's a 2 game. That's the luxury of the college football playoffs, and that's the luxury of playing in the SEC. You have to have at least 2 losses, not more. If you have more than 2 losses, then you're going to be out. So 2 losses max. But is the era over in Nick Saban? No, the era is never going to be over as long as Nick Saban is the coach. As long as Nick Saban is the coach at Alabama, he can get the recruits. He may not have as much money. He has a Texas A&M, and all these other schools, but he can get the recruits because of the history. Just the history of Alabama, the history of the SEC and winning national championships. People are going to want to play for Nick Saban. People thought after Texas and after USF, should I say, that Alabama and Nick Saban's team wasn't even going to make it this far. And they proved everybody wrong. They got better in the season. So this one loss just doesn't define, is the Nick Saban year over? The Nick Saban era is over. He hasn't won 3 years without winning a national championship. He will never win a national championship. Like, nah. This is a rebuilding year. Everybody said that this was a rebuilding year for Alabama. And to make it as one of the best 4 teams, make it to the college football playoffs, and play against the best team in the committee's eyes in the nation, and put up a fight after, as bad as it looked in the first half, only down by 3 points, getting punched in the mouth, allowing sacks left and right, for the offensive line to get a little bit better in the second half and have all the momentum. Had it not been a fumble by Jalen Milroe, they could have easily won this game. They had all the momentum. The defense was playing pretty good in the second half. And if it wasn't for J.J. McCarthy and the Michigan team driving all the way down the field, we will be having a conversation of, is Nick Saban done it again? Is Nick Saban at the top of the college football world? Instead of now, since he's lost by 7 points on the last play of overtime, Nick Saban is not that guy no more. It's the end of the Alabama era, the Nick Saban era. With the college football playoffs being a 12-team race, all Alabama has to do is not lose more than 2 games. And I'm fully confident that Alabama will be back. Just like with Michigan. Michigan will for sure be back. Both of these teams were good. Both of these teams have bright futures ahead. It's just this was Michigan's day. After losing so many times, never beating an SEC team in the college football playoffs, they wanted to prove a point. They wanted to make a statement win. And Coach Harbaugh wanted to prove to everybody that he can win in the college football playoffs. And sure enough, he's going to be competing for a college football championship. And this is going to be Michigan's, if they win, their first time winning one since 1948. Going to be their first time. So shout out to Michigan. This was a great win by Michigan. Very good win by Michigan. Very good game by J.J. McCarthy. Very good game by the defensive line. Alabama, you had it. You had it at the end. You had all the momentum. It felt as though that the Rose Bowl was going to come right to you. And Michigan stripped that from you. It was literally in your fingertips, Alabama. It was in our fingertips. But Michigan stripped that from you. That's exactly what Michigan did to pull out the W. So, great game. GG's to Michigan. And hopefully you can finish it out. Now let's move on to the second college football playoff game, the Sugar Bowl between number 2 Washington and number 3 Texas. Washington ends up pulling out a nail biter at the end to win the game 37-31. Michael Penix Jr., 29 of 38 for 430 yards and 2 touchdowns. Had a phenomenal game. Dalen Johnson, 21 carries, 49 yards, 2 TDs. Rome Odunze, 6 receptions, 125 yards, was the leading receiver on the team. Jalen Polk, 5 receptions, 122 yards, and a TD. Jalen McMillan, 5 receptions for 58 yards and 1 TD. Grady Gross was also 3 for 3 on field goals, which the last field goal was very clutch to put them up in the game, I think by double figures. And Jack Westover had 6 receptions for 59 yards. Let's talk about Quinn Ewers, 24-43 for 318 yards. He also had 8 carries for 54 yards. C.J. Baxter, the running back, was the leading rusher with 9 carries for 64 yards and a TD. Jaden Blue also had a TD to go along with 9 carries for 59 yards. And shout out to Byron Murphy, the big lineman, with 1 carry for 1 yard and a touchdown. Jatavian Sanders was their leading receiver with 6 receptions for 75 yards. Jordan Whittington with 4 receptions for 70 yards, including that big-time catch to put Texas in the red zone for Texas to have a chance on scoring a touchdown to potentially take the lead. That was a phenomenal catch, great throw by Quinn Ewers. Xavier Worthy only had 2 receptions for 45 yards and a TD, and A.D. Mitchell with 4 receptions for 32 yards and 1 TD. Michael Penix Jr. was cooking on all cylinders. Washington was cooking on all cylinders. They were cooking with hot grease, and Michael Penix Jr. was throwing dimes left and right. If I am a NFL GM, I am going after Michael Penix Jr. I don't care about his age. I don't care about his injuries. I don't care about his height. I don't care about none of that. The throws that he was making in this game, and I'm going to show y'all some of these throws. The throws that he was making in these games was absolutely beautiful. That left-handed throw was absolutely beautiful, and he was throwing them on the money. Quinn Ewers, he played all right. He stepped it up in the second half. But the first half, he was just straight all right. What really killed Texas was the fumbles. The 2 fumbles at the beginning of the third quarter and the beginning of the fourth quarter really killed them. One of them leading to a field goal. And I think the other one did also lead into a field goal as well. But both of those really killed them, especially the screen route to the running back, and he runs into his own player causing a fumble. That really could have made the lead it could have made it one possession. Really could have made it one possession versus them having to drive all the way back down the field again and hitting A.D. Mitchell for a touchdown to make it one possession. That could have been the lead change versus if they don't fumble in Washington territory, they would have potentially scored a touchdown, and that could have been a one possession game, and the catch by A.D. Mitchell could have been the lead changing game. But that last drive by Washington to set up that field goal by Grady Gross was absolutely beautiful. Sort of kind of like the drive against Oregon in regards to they were going after Texas weaknesses. You can't cover none of our wide receivers. We're going to attack each and every one of your cornerbacks. And that is exactly what they did, especially the throw to Rome Odunze. That was a great throw. And they were killing the Texas cornerbacks the entire game. Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan, Rome Odunze, they were killing them. Washington probably has the best wide receiver core in all of the college football games, in all of 1 through 4, Michigan, Texas, Alabama. Probably have the best out of the 4 teams making it to the college football playoffs. Those wide receivers are great. And the crazy thing about it, I feel as though Texas is they're more talented than Washington. I feel as though Texas is more talented than Washington. I really do. From top to bottom, I feel as though they're more talented. But Washington, they just won. And with everything at stake, if Texas would have won this game, they could have easily basically had home field because they're playing in Houston versus Michigan. They would have basically had home field, and they pretty much had home field in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl, and they flat out sold. And it was the same thing in college basketball to bring it back to Texas, and they flat out sold. Texas, you should feel ashamed. You had everything on the line. If you win this game, you're coming back to Houston with every single person that's from Texas rooting for y'all, other than your Texas A&M fans. But everybody's rooting for Texas. You're going to have pretty much home field against Michigan, and you flat out sell the bag. The cornerbacks could not stop none of the wide receivers. And I want y'all to look at some of these throws by Michael Penix Jr. because some of these throws were pro throws, and I really want y'all to look at this. This was the one right before halftime to make it 21-14. I just want you to look at that laser. The ball was so good that the wide receiver didn't even think that he was going to catch it. He thought that it was going to get flat out picked off. Flat out thought it was going to get picked off. Here's another throw that I want y'all to look at. 2nd down and 3. Just over the cornerback. Just over the cornerback. Cornerback didn't even have a chance at it. Didn't even turn in time. That is a great throw. And that whole entire drive by Washington was just great. They knew that the Texas DBs couldn't cover. They couldn't cover none of their wide receivers. So we're going to attack them. We're going to attack them. And this was after the A.D. Mitchell catch to make it a one-score game with 7 minutes. There was 7 minutes left in the game. So it was sort of kind of like the Oregon game where they get the ball with all of this time left and they go after the team's weaknesses. Against Oregon, they attacked the run because Dylan Johnson was running for over 5 yards a carry. This game, they saw that Texas DBs couldn't cover. So what did they do? They attacked every single one of them. And I just want y'all to look. We're going to do it right here. 5 minutes and 35 seconds. 1st down and 10. Little swing route to Jalen McMillan. Working the perimeter. That's the first play. The second play. Throwing it to Roma Doomsday, which I just showed y'all. And that set up a field goal for Grady Gross to make it a 2-score game with 2 minutes and 44 seconds left. Mind you, they got the ball with 7 minutes left in the game. And they attacked each and every one of the Texas DBs. The turnovers killed Texas. The turnovers killed them. The fumbles killed them. And Michael Penix Jr. dimed each and every one of those wide receivers. Killed each and every one of those Texas DBs. Nickeling and diming. Throwing dimes down the field. Texas just flat out couldn't cover. And I knew that this game was going to be a shootout. I thought that it was going to be a 44-41 game. I tweeted it on my X page. I thought it was going to be a 44-41 game, 38-35 game. No team couldn't stop nobody. But the turnovers really killed Texas. And Michael Penix Jr. was literally killing this team. Only threw for 9 incompletions. Only had 9 incompletions the whole entire game. Quinn Ewers didn't play as good in the first half, but the second half he played better. And I want y'all to keep in mind, Michael Penix Jr. only missed 1 pass the entire third quarter. 1 pass the entire third quarter. That is phenomenal. And the play that he did miss on, it hit the person in his hands. He just couldn't bring it in. So that was the only time he missed. But needless to say, Texas DBs got cooked the entire game. Literally cooked by all of the wide receivers. Warren Doomsday, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan. And Washington has the best wide receiver core out of the top 4. Clearly, that was exactly what was shown. The Washington defense was doing pretty good. They were holding the Texas wide receivers. Your Xavier Worthy's the only 2 catches. Your A.D. Mitchell's the only 2 catches. Your people that you really needed, your game changers, Washington did a good job holding them. did a very good job. And on the last play of the game, people want to call it a pass interference. We're going to look at it. I honestly believe that it was a good play by the DB. Let's go to it. Well, first I want to look at the Quinn Ewers play. Let's look at the Quinn Ewers play to Jordan Whittington for a big time play. Let's look at it.
Closest to line in the three receivers to the right. Ewers lofts it up. There's single coverage.
That was his best throw of the game. Best throw of the game. Last play of the game. 4th down and 11. People say he jumped over him. Maybe a little bit of contact. But I feel as though that was just a good play by the Washington DB. Very good play by the Washington DB. I don't know why Quinn Ewers lobbed it. I feel as though if he would have bulleted, if he would have threw it early, or if he would have attacked, the wide receiver would have attacked the pylon, maybe it could have been a touchdown. Maybe. But the Washington DB, that was a good deflection. Very good coverage by him. And Washington ends up pulling out the W. Very good game. Like I told y'all with the Alabama-Michigan game. If it's just a casual fan just want to look at some good football, both of these games were good. Both of these games were for you. Looked at both of them. Because high-scoring game, shootout game, if you want that type of football game, Washington versus Texas were good for you. Was good for you. If you want a smash mouth, adjusting game by Nick Saban in the second half and smash mouth by Michigan, good defense by both teams in the second half, especially by Alabama, you look at that. With the overtime thriller, you look at Alabama versus Michigan. Both of these games were very, very, very good. Both of these games was what I expected. I expected Washington and Texas to have a more high-scoring game than Michigan versus Alabama. I expected it to be a shootout, but I really did expect Texas and Alabama going to the national championship, the college football national championship game. And boy, I was wrong. 0-2 for both of my picks, but Michael Penix Jr. looks like the best quarterback out of the four. He was looking very good in this game. Sharp shooter. Very sharp. That left-handed, beautiful throw was just straight sharp. Looked very good. Each and every one of his throws looked very good. And like I said before, Texas, the DBs killed Texas, and the turnovers really killed Texas because they couldn't stop a cold. They couldn't stop a nosebleed. They just couldn't. So shout out to Washington. Shout out to the coaching by Washington. Shout out to Washington for winning against Texas. So now we move to my predictions for the national championship game in Houston, Texas, between the Washington Huskies, the number 2 team in the nation, versus Michigan, the number 1 team in the nation. If you think that this game is going to be a flat-out blowout by Michigan, you think that they're going to come in and beat the brakes off of Washington, you're sadly mistaken. Like I said, Washington probably has the best wide receiver core out of the four teams. With Jalen Polk, Rome Odunze, and Jalen McMillan, those are some dogs. Along with Michael Penix Jr., the Heisman runner-up. Along with Dylan Johnson, a great run game. A very good run game. But then you have Michigan with J.J. McCarthy, with Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, Cornelius Johnson, Roman Wilson, who is the best player, best wide receiver for Michigan against Alabama, for Colston Loveland. They got some people on that team. They got some people on both offensive sides of the ball. They really do. But Michigan defense got some dogs. So I really feel as though it's going to be Michigan's run attack versus Washington's defense. I really do. I feel as though Blake Corum is going to be able to run. I really do feel like Michigan is going to be able to effectively run the ball against Washington. But don't sleep on Washington. If Michael Penix Jr. is on, Michigan is in trouble. Michigan is in flat-out trouble if Michael Penix Jr. has time in the pocket, unlike Jalen Milroe did against Michigan. And Washington has a better offensive line than Alabama. They do. So if Michael Penix Jr. has time and they're able to beat Michigan down the field and these wide receivers can get loose, oh yeah, Michigan is for sure in trouble. For sure in trouble, without a doubt. But then at the same time, if Washington cannot stop Blake Corum and they cannot stop that run game and they can't stop the running attack of J.J. McCarthy too, if J.J. McCarthy is able to run out the pocket, scramble, get some yards, Washington could easily lose this game. But I feel like both teams are going to be able to put some points up on the board. I feel as though it's going to be way lower than a 37-30 type game. I really do. 37-31 type game like the Washington-Texas game. But I feel as though it's probably going to be like a 28-25, 28-24 game, maybe something like that. But if Michael Penix Jr. is able to dime and kill Michigan's secondary, oh yeah, Michigan's going to be in for a long day. The X Factor, we both know what the X Factors are. We all know what the X Factors are for Washington. It's Michael Penix Jr. He's just a flat-out X Factor. But if Michigan's defense could get home on him, they're going to flat-out lose the game. They're going to flat-out lose the game. Because I feel as though, obviously, as you saw with Michigan versus Alabama, Michigan, their nose tackles, they're able to stop that run. That inside, that interior line, they're able to stop the run. So I feel as though Dillon Johnson might not have as good of a game in the championship, so it's going to really all come down to Michael Penix Jr. If he's able to kill them, throw them the ball, then maybe they can open up the running attack. But if not, I got Michigan winning. If Washington can't stop the run game, it's that simple. If Washington can't stop the run game, if they can't stop Blake Corum in that run game, and they can't get home, they can't stop J.J. McCarthy running the ball, Michigan is going to win this game. Michigan's going to win this game. That's exactly how it's going to go. Do I think Michigan's wide receivers are going to go off like that? I don't really think so. They might have some catches here and there. They're going to have a touchdown for sure. I think Roman Wilson is going to have a touchdown. I think the tight end might have a touchdown. But all of it is going to come down to Blake Corum running the football and J.J. McCarthy running the football. I can guarantee you that. So if Washington's able to stop that, they can win. And Michael Penix Jr. is cooking with hot grease like he was against Texas. Because, my God, he was cooking with hot grease. Boy, they couldn't stop him. If it's like a boy, you can't stop him for Michigan, then Washington is going to win. But I honestly, it's hard. This is actually hard because it's not going to be a blowout. It's not going to be a blowout at all. But I think it's probably going to be like a 28-24, 28-25 game. But I got Michigan winning. But I wouldn't be shocked if Washington comes into Houston and pulls out a W against Michigan. If Michael Penix Jr. is on, that's what it all comes down to. If Michael Penix Jr. isn't connected with any of his receivers, his Rome Odunze, his Jalen McMillans, his Jalen Pokes, who have had great games these past few games, and really throughout the season, because Rome Odunze now has the record for receiving yards for Washington Huskies, has a single season receiving yard record. So if he's on, if any of these receivers are on, that's how talented they are. They can win this game. So it's Michael Penix Jr. versus Blake Corum in that line. Michael Penix Jr. in that line versus Blake Corum in that line. Flat out, that simple. And if those receivers can get open for Washington, it's going to be a long day for Michigan. But I got Michigan winning 28-24, 28-25. Let me know who y'all got. Like I said, I really wouldn't be surprised if Michael Penix Jr. in Washington comes into Texas and takes it from him. but I got Michigan winning. I just feel like they're going to be more physical than Washington. I really do. I think they're going to be a more physical team. And that running attack, especially towards the end of the game when it matters most, they're going to be able to overpower Washington's D-line. So let me know who y'all think is going to win the championship, the college football championship. This is going to be an interesting one. It's not going to be a flat-out blowout by either one of these teams. Both of these teams are going to score. This might mess around and be one of the best college football playoffs in regards to the 1 through 4. I'm not talking about all of those in the past. I'm just talking about the college football standings, the top 4 teams. I feel as though it could mess around and be the best one. It could mess around and be the best one. It could be better than the Alabama Clemson ones or the Alabama Georgia ones. It has the potential. That's how good both of these teams are. That's how good the quarterbacks are. So I'm really interested in it. I'm really interested on how this game is going to be. This is going to be a very good game. I don't think either one of these teams are going to get blown out. I don't think. Especially with it being in Texas, NRG Stadium, is going to be an interesting one. So let me know who y'all got winning that game. That's going to be very interesting. Let's move on to another bowl game. We're going to move on to the largest win in bowl game history. And they beat their own record against the national championship runner-up last year, TCU. Georgia blitzes Florida State 63-3 in the Orange Bowl. Carson Beck, 13 of 18 for 203 yards and 2 TDs. Gunnar Stockton was, I think, the second string or third string quarterback. He was 6 of 10 for 96 yards and 2 TDs. Kendall Milton, 9 carries for 104 yards and 2 TDs. Dejon Edwards, 7 carries for 62 yards and 2 TDs. Roderick Robertson, 7 carries for 70 yards. And Ladd McConkey with 1 carry for 27 yards. It was a lateral and 1 TD. The leading receiver was Dylan Bell with 5 receptions for 86 yards. Dominic Levitt with 3 receptions for 38 yards and 1 TD. Ladd McConkey also had 1 reception for 22 yards. Anthony Evans, the third. These are now the third string, fourth string wide receivers. 1 reception for 14 yards and a TD. Arian Smith had a reception for 12 yards and a TD. And Lawson Lackley with 1 reception for 4 yards and 1 TD. Brock Glenn, the true freshman quarterback, was 9 of 26 for 139 yards. No touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Ja'Kai Douglas with 8 receptions for 46 yards. And Kentron Poitier with 4 receptions for 84 yards. So you're probably looking at the score, 63-3. And you're probably thinking, man, Georgia really dominated this team, which they did. I really expected Florida State, after them not making the college football playoffs, to have some sort of grit, some sort of thing to get mad at. Man, we didn't make the college football playoffs. We were the 5th team. We're going to come and blitz Georgia and actually have a competitive game against Georgia. And Georgia just showed them boys like, man, like, even if they didn't have all of their guys, they were over 25 people were opted out in the game. They either opted out or transferred in the game. Georgia, if they had all of their starters, they would have killed Florida State. It was a difference. Even though Georgia was at full strength pretty much relatively, and Florida State was without their top 2 quarterbacks, their top 2 running backs, their top 2 wide receivers, a starting tight end, 3 starting defensive linemen, 2 starting linemen, and 3 starting defensive backs. 3 starting defensive backs. I feel as though even if they all played, Georgia would have still won this game. Georgia's a better team than Florida State. Without Jordan Travis, they wasn't going to make the top 4. And if they did make it to the college football playoffs, they would have easily lost to Michigan, probably like 30-0, 28-0. And I said that earlier. They would have got blitzed. Florida State would have got blitzed. But my whole thing, and Kirby Smart is right, like it's getting ridiculous, I feel as though. And to an extent, I personally believe that the transfer portal shouldn't be open until the end of the season. Once the season is over with, then you could transfer wherever you want to go. But in the middle of the season, during the bowl games, now you're having all of these transfers. I don't really care too much about the opt-outs, but the transfer portal being open and now all of these people are transferring, I really don't like that at all. And it's like that for the coaches too. Coaches shouldn't be able to go get coaching jobs right in the middle of the season, right around bowl game time. It shouldn't be like that. What you're now seeing in college football is the business side of college football with the NIL deals. And now these kids are transferring. They're doing what's best for their family. You got to see it in their shoes. Maybe football is the only way out for them, only way out for their family. So they feel as though they're going to go somewhere with the money. Is it kind of messed up a little bit? Yes, because it's ruining how the game is being played. It's being more business wise, and some people are putting, themselves first, which is what you got to do. But in regards to it having a meaning, the college football games now having a meaning, it really doesn't, because now they just want to get the bag now. But you got to see it from their perspective. You got to see it in their shoes. They're making this money for their families. They got to do what they got to do. But the transfer portal shouldn't be open until after the season is over with. It shouldn't be open during bowl game. And now you have all of these transfers. Tate Rodemaker, who played against Louisville, he transferred. He got up out of there. And all of these people decided to opt out. And the bowl games don't really mean anything this year. So for Kirby Smart to really say that the bowl games and everything, I agree with him to an extent. But the bowl game's not really meaning anything. Next year, when the college football playoffs is a 12-team bracket instead of a 4-team bracket, now all of these teams that you would think is going to make the college football playoffs, they're going to make the college football playoffs, and they're going to play with a, some sort of meaning behind it because they want to win a national championship. So that issue of now kids just transferring is still going to be there. Opting out, not as much, because of the simple fact. Now, instead of it being a 4-team playoff race, it's a 12-team playoff race. So now you have all the teams that you would think is going to make the college football playoffs, they're now going to make it. All you got to do now with this 12-team college football playoff race is not lose more than 2 games. 1 game, fine. 2 games is kind of pushing it, depending on who you lose to. But if you lose 3-4 games, you're for sure not going to make the college football playoffs at all. For sure not going to make the college football playoffs at all. But if you're a team like a Ohio State, a Alabama, a Texas, or Georgia, with these teams in the SEC and Big Ten, you can lose a game and still get in. You can lose maybe 2 games and still get in. But if you lose 3-4 games, you're not going to get in the college football playoffs. So these bowl games, people opting out of it right now because they feel as though they don't have a meaning behind it. And that's exactly what Florida State did after not making the college football playoffs. They feel as though, why even have to play in the bowl games if the college football playoffs, we didn't make it, and we felt as though we were 13-0. We were the first undefeated Power 5 school to not make the college football playoffs, and we were left out of it. Why do we feel as though we need to come and play Georgia? Which I feel as though they should play Georgia. I really do. I feel as though the starters should play Georgia, but I would see why they don't if they want to make it to the draft and they don't want to risk themselves getting hurt. But the transfer portal, I feel as though that should be out the window until the end of the season. I feel as though you can either opt out and not play, or you can play the game. But transferring after the championship game, I feel as though that needs to get pushed back until the end of the season, because that's really the part that's making it messed up. NIL is making it messed up a little bit, but it's the people transferring and leaving as soon as the championship game is over and bowl games they don't want to play. Not necessarily the opt-outs or opt-ins. It's not really that. It is to an extent, but that's not really the big thing. It's the transfer portal. But all of this will get kind of solved a little bit once next year starts and the playoff bracket is a 12-team playoff bracket versus a 4-team, best 4 teams. We got to pick the best 4 teams, and if you're not in it now, you don't got to play no more. If it was a 12-team playoff race, everybody for Florida State would have played because they felt as though they were going to have something to prove, and they were going to try and show it to try and make a college football national championship game. But since it's a 4-team playoff race this year, and this year was probably one of the toughest years, I can see if you say it is one of the toughest years because one team beat the number 1 team in the nation, while one team was undefeated. Yes, they lost their starting quarterback, but they were undefeated. Power 5 school did what they had to do. Didn't get put in the college football playoffs. Had it been a 12-team race, all of this would have been erased. So it's good that the committee is making it a 12-team playoff race. And I feel like they should have been did that. But needless to say, the fact that Florida State really just was really complaining, and it just felt as though after the college football rankings came out and they wasn't in it, they just complained, and now they just don't want to play no more. It was like really just on some petty, oh, you're not going to put us in? Oh, watch, we're not even going to come and play. At least Georgia came and played. I thought that this game was going to be a something to prove game. Florida State was going to come with something to prove. Georgia was going to have something to prove, just like with Alabama not getting put in last year, and they put in TCU, and TCU got smoked by Kansas State, and Alabama comes in and blitzes Kansas State. I thought they were going to have some sort of something to prove, some sort of chip on their shoulder, and that's what they were going to come in with against Georgia. And that was not the case at all. They had so many opt-outs, and they just really, they came with their shoulder pads, they came with their jerseys, they came in uniform, but they didn't come. They didn't come to play at all. Georgia came to play. They didn't care that they didn't make the college football playoffs. They were hurt that they didn't make the college football playoffs. And they decided to play Florida State with pretty much their full roster, pretty much, but Brock Bowers ain't playing. A bunch of other people didn't play. But for the most part, they were full power, full strength for the most part. And they came and they just flat out blitzed Florida State. And I still felt as though it would have been the same result if they had everybody on their team. But it was just a bad look for Florida State after just complaining about not making the college football playoffs. You come and you just get blitzed by Georgia. I personally believe that Georgia was a better team than Florida State, especially after Jordan Travis got injured. But the fact that they came in with just no energy, no effort, didn't really want to be there, just on some sore loser, which I mean, I get that y'all ain't make it. But at least come with some effort. You just came and you just got your ass blitzed. That's exactly what happened. And it was just a bad look for y'all. It was really a bad look. It did more harm than good, really. Even if y'all made the college football playoffs, y'all would have lost to Michigan. Y'all would have lost. Y'all would have lost to each and every one of those teams. Y'all would have lost to Michigan, y'all would have lost to Texas, and y'all would have lost to Washington. So at least, for a season standpoint, don't just feel as though, okay, if y'all don't make the college football playoffs, it's over. Nah, play Georgia and actually be competitive. That's how I feel about it. But now, since starting next year, is going to be a 12-team playoff race, all of that is going to be gone. All of that is going to be gone. Now all of these teams are going to want to play for a championship. So your same teams that you think are going to be in your Alabamas, your Georgias, your Ohio States, your Michigans, those teams are going to automatically be, those teams are going to be in. Some teams are going to be in, and you know what teams may not be in. But to pick all 12 team is kind of hard. It's kind of hard. But if this was this year, the 12-team playoff ranking was this year, what Florida State was doing after not making the college football playoffs would not have even happened. So good win by Georgia. Very good win by Georgia. And they put in their third string group in the second half, and they still scored 21 points against Florida State. So it's like, if they did that with their third string group, imagine if it was just one first string, both at full string. You know, especially without Jordan Travis. Even with Jordan Travis, Georgia was still going to win that game. Let's talk a little bit about some more bowl games. We're going to start off with Oregon versus Liberty. Oregon blitzing Liberty 45-6 to win the Fiesta Bowl. Then Bo Nix's final college football game, breaking Marcus Mariota's touchdown record. He had 363 passing yards, 5 TDs on 28 of 35 passing. Bucky Irvin with 14 carries for 117 yards and 1 TD. Jordan James with 9 carries and 63 yards. Tej Johnson was their leading receiver with 11 receptions for 172 yards and 1 TD. Trayshawn Holden, 5 receptions for 69 yards and a TD. Gary Bryant Jr. had a TD to go along with 62 yards on 4 receptions. Terrence Ferguson also had a TD on 18 yards with 2 receptions. And Ken Sadiq had 1 reception for 3 yards and a TD. Caden Salter for the Liberty Flames was 15 of 24 for 126 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Quinn Cooley, 79 yards on 8 carries. CJ Daniels with 8 receptions, 79 yards, their leading receiver. And Bentley Hanshaw with 1 reception for 17 yards and 1 TD. After the first half, this game was pretty much over. Liberty came out, first drive, scored a touchdown. Then after that, Oregon proceeded to beat the piss out of Liberty. Beat the dog shit out of Liberty. And Bo Nix was just cooking on all cylinders. That offense was cooking on all cylinders. And I said Oregon was going to win this game. I said Oregon was going to blitz Liberty. And sure enough, they did. They did whatever they wanted. They did whatever they wanted to Liberty. From start to finish. Liberty, after that first drive, you would think, okay, they were going to come back with some firepower, and Oregon really just shut that down. Oregon shut it down. So, good for Liberty for making one of the New Year's Six Bowls, but Oregon was just too much for them. Bo Nix was just too much for them. And Bo Nix has really had a good Oregon career after a, in my personal opinion, mediocre career at Auburn. He comes to Oregon and he balls. He flat out balls, breaking Marcus Mariota's touchdown record. He played very good at Oregon. Kind of sucks that he didn't make the college football playoffs. He couldn't beat Washington twice. He couldn't beat them at least one time. So I know he's probably going to look back on that, and with that, he could have beat them at least one of the times, especially in the Pac-12 championship, to at least give his team a chance on making the college football playoffs, but he didn't. But it's good that he decided to play in his last game, to at least play in the bowl game versus not playing against Washington, and that was just it. So the fact that Bo Nix came and played in the Fiesta Bowl against Liberty, making it his last collegiate game as a Oregon quarterback, I know that was just a bittersweet moment for Bo Nix. So shout out to Oregon. Good dub against Liberty. Dominated from start to finish, especially after that first drive for Liberty, and they ended up scoring a touchdown. Oregon scored 28 points in the second quarter. 28 points in the second quarter. This game was over after that. Literally, it was 31-6. 31-6 at halftime. So this game was over. So Oregon flat out dominated. We're going to talk a little bit about Ohio State. Ohio State lost to Missouri in the Cotton Bowl 14-3, their first game without Kyle McCord, Marvin Harrison Jr., who opted out to go to the NFL, declared for the NFL draft. Kyle McCord ended up transferring. Julian Fleming transferred, and more. Ohio State Buckeyes players decided to either opt out or transfer. Devin Brown was 4 of 6 for 20 yards. He left the game with an ankle injury. So Lincoln Kienholz was 6 of 17 for 86 yards. The true freshman came in and decided to play the whole entire game. Travion Henderson, 19 carries for 72 yards. Xavier Johnson, 4 carries for 35 yards. Emeka Abuka was their leading receiver with 6 receptions for 63 yards. Xavier Johnson was 2 receptions for 31 yards. Brady Cook for the Missouri Tigers, 11 receptions, 11 of 18 for 128 yards and 1 TD. Brady Cook also had 19 carries for 66 yards. He also had a touchdown throwing the football. Luther Bird with 1 carry for 20 yards. Cody Schrader was 29 carries with 128 yards and 1 TD. Luther Bird also had 3 receptions for 15 yards and a touchdown in the fourth quarter. Marquise Johnson had a big play down the field, run reception for 50 yards. Theo Veach Jr. with 4 receptions for 43 yards. Missouri scored all their points in the fourth quarter. We knew with Ohio State, we knew that Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to declare for the draft. Kyle McCord, once they transferred, this wasn't going to be the same team. Once Devin Brown got hurt, which I don't know about Ohio State fans, but I don't know how Devin Brown is going to pan out as a quarterback for Ohio State, and Lincoln Kienholz is a true freshman. Missouri's defense was just flat out good. So with Ohio State playing with, a true freshman quarterback, we knew that it wasn't going to be a good game for Ohio State. We knew it. The O-line needs some help. If I'm Ryan Day for the offseason, I need to get O-line help because they could not run the football. Travion Henderson really couldn't get nowhere. Their running game was just flat out couldn't do anything. The passing game, they really couldn't do anything because Missouri's defense was just good. Ohio State, we know every single year they're going to have a defense. That's one thing with Ohio State. They're going to get a defense every single year. They're going to recruit some good DBs, some good safeties, and they're going to recruit some good wide receivers year in, year out. But you got to get some O-line help. And you got to get a quarterback. You got to figure out who your quarterback is going to be next season. That's the big question. Who's your quarterback going to be? And what is that O-line going to look like? You're going to get the wide receivers. You're going to get the defense, the cornerbacks, your safeties, your line. You're going to get all of that. But you got to figure out who the quarterback in that O-line is. If you can't figure that out next year from Ohio State, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in trouble. The fact that they only allowed 14 points with a whole lot of opt-outs, Ohio State, we knew that was going to happen, and we knew if they were at full strength with Marvin Harrison Jr., Julian Fleming, Kyle McCord, they would have won this game. They would have easily won this game without question. So I don't look at this too much as a bad loss, but next season, they need to get some O-line help. They really need to get some O-line help. This was a good win for Missouri. They've never even really made it this far. What was it, a 10-win season? This was a very good year for Missouri. If I'm Missouri, I'm feeling good about myself. But if I'm Ohio State, you got to get some O-line help, and you got to figure out who your quarterback is. And you got to beat Michigan. You don't want to see Michigan win that championship this year. You don't want to see him. Because Ryan Day's going to have to get that championship for Ohio State. They see that Harbaugh won one. Ryan Day's got to get one. And you got to beat Michigan next year. You cannot go 4 straight years without losing. 4 straight years without winning against Michigan. You can't go 4 straight years of losing to Michigan. Because if you lose to Michigan 4 straight years, especially on your home turf this year, it's not going to be looking good for Ryan Day. It's not going to be looking good for Ryan Day. So figure out who's on your offensive line. Figure out who you need to recruit for your offensive line. Figure out who your quarterback is going to be. You're going to get the wide receivers because you're Ohio State. You're going to get the DBs because you're Ohio State. That defense only held Missouri to 14 points. That's just Ohio State. But figure out who's going to be on that line because that line against Missouri was dog shit. Figure out who your quarterback is going to be and beat Michigan. That is the 3 goals that Ryan Day needs to have for next year. Figure out who your quarterback is. Get some O-line help. Beat Michigan, and obviously compete for a national championship. Those are the 4 goals, should I say. So, good win for Missouri. Ohio State, you got some work to do. You got some work to do in the transfer portal and in the recruiting process. Got some work to do. Now, the last thing that I really want to talk about is the Detroit Pistons. We're going to shift our focus to NBA basketball. I couldn't believe that I went this long without talking about the Detroit Pistons. I'm casually just looking at the streak just build and build and build. One game turns to 10 games. 10 games turns to 15. 15 turns to 20. I'm sitting here, I'm like, how long is this streak gonna go? But they finally ended it. They finally ended it. The Detroit Pistons losing streak has finally ended after 28 straight games of losing. They haven't won a game since November. But they finally beat a team. They defeated the Toronto Raptors 129-127 at home. And everybody's going to be eating some free Wingstop. Because if Detroit would have won a game, it was going to be free Wingstop galore for everybody. Everybody that lives in Detroit and our Detroit Piston fans are coming home happy. Cade Cunningham, 38 minutes, 30 points, 12 assists, 3 rebounds. Jalen Duren had 18 points, 17 rebounds. Jaden Ivey, 12 points, 4 assists, 5 rebounds. Kevin Knox also had a good game, 17 points. Bojan Bogdanovic had 19, and Alec Burks off the bench was a spark for the Detroit Pistons with 16 points. Dennis Schroeder for the Raptors had 30 points, 9 assists. Pascal Siakam, 35 points, 4 assists, 5 rebounds. Scotty Barnes had 22 points, 2 assists, 9 rebounds. Gary Trent Jr. had 24 points, though he had some clutch buckets down at the end. And, yeah, it's kind of crazy. When I look at the Detroit Pistons, as bad as their record is, 3-30, worst team record-wise in the NBA, they don't look like a bad team at all. They don't look as bad as what their record is, as crazy as it is. They got some talent on that roster. You saw against Boston, they were up by 21 points at one point. And they just let the lead just dwindle. And they let Boston come back and win. When I looked at that game, I saw Cade Cunningham was balling. Even though in the second half, Boston made adjustments and he kind of flared out. They kind of stopped Cade Cunningham. The team ain't looked bad at all. They could have easily won that game. This game, everybody was clicking. Alec Burks off the bench came with some good minutes. 19 minutes off the bench with 16 points. Everybody was playing. Cade, Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey. They have talent on this team. And they have a good coach. That won Coach of the Year with the Suns. So when you look at it from that standpoint, you just question to yourself, how is this team with all of this talent? You have the number 1 overall pick. You have another lottery pick with Jalen Duren. You have Jaden Ivey, which, if I'm not mistaken, was a lottery pick. You have all of these guys. How in the world did they lose 28 straight games? It's got to be a mental thing. When you lose so many times, especially on the road, every single road game that you have, you might have the mindset of, man, we're not going to win. Especially if it gets to 15. If you lose 15 straight games, you're going to sit to yourself. It's a mental thing. Not only for the coach, but for the players. The coach got to somehow gather these troops together mentally and be like, hey, we're going to win this game. Yes, it took them 28 straight losing games. It took them that long before they finally got a W. And they ended up losing to the Rockets after that. And when I look at the Rockets game versus the Pistons, the Rockets were only up by 2 points at halftime. Well, they were up by 4. And the Pistons cut it down to as low as 2. But if it wasn't for the Rockets going on a big run in the third quarter that really opened up the game for them, they could have easily won the game. They could have easily won the game. The Pistons do not look like a bad team. It's just something in that locker room. Is it the coach? It got to be something. They got Steven Silas on the assistant coach sitting down. So, he's going to bring at least 20 straight L's to the team. That's just what comes with him. That's like a part of the package. You get Steven Silas on your team, he's coming with 20 straight L's. That's just mandatory with him. So I don't know what it is, but when I look at a Detroit Pistons team that has lost 28 straight games, that are 3-30 as of right now in the season, they don't look as bad in regards to who they have on their team, the talent with Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey, James Wiseman. You got to remember, Cade Cunningham was the first overall pick in the draft. You had James Wiseman, if I'm not mistaken, was the second overall pick. All of these guys that they have, these young guys, were lottery picks. So when you look at the team just on paper and you see that they got these young guys, what they need to have on the Pistons team, they need to have a good head coach, which Monty Williams, who just won Coach of the Year when he was at the Suns, is a good head coach. That's number one. What else you need to have? You need to have veteran guys on your team that know how to win. It was the same situation with the Rockets. The same exact situation with the Rockets. Everybody on that team was playing street ball and their team was young. Jalen Green was like the veteran on that team. You had Jalen Green handling the rock and you had Kevin Porter Jr. handling the rock. Both of them play pretty much a street ball type style. You have Sengun, who is now breaking out to be the best guy on the team, but they're still young overall. Tari Eason, Jay Sean Tate, and all of these guys, they don't have no veterans on that team that know how to win games. So you bring in someone like a Udoka as a head coach after firing your last head coach. Then you bring in guys like Dylan Brooks, your Fred VanVleet. Fred VanVleet just won a championship a couple of years ago with Toronto. He knows how to win. You get better on the defensive side by adding Dylan Brooks to your team, who can also score the ball. You're adding more older guys to the team. You're adding Jeff Green to the team, who just won a championship with Denver a year ago. So with bringing in those guys, you're bringing in veteran players to teach someone like a Jalen Green and to have the ball in those situations, those crunch time situations when you don't need to turn the ball over, run a pick and roll to get free for an open, good-looking shot. Versus in those crunch time moments a year ago, it was straight street ball and there was a lot of turnovers. Fred VanVleet is teaching Jalen Green a lot what to do and what not to do in those situations when they come. Udoka is teaching the team what to do and what not to do. And you clearly see it with their record this year versus what their record was a year ago. Their team has overall got better because the young guys are getting taught by the OGs, the older guys who have won, who have experience on how to win games and how to close out games. The Rockets couldn't close out games last year. And you see it with the Pistons. They just can't close out. They're horrible defensively. And their veterans, Bogdanovich and Alec Burks, those are not the veterans that you need on your team in regards to they know how to win games. If they get some veterans on their team, if they had someone like a Fred VanVleet or Dylan Brooks or even a Jeff Green, someone just as simple as a Jeff Green who has been in the league for years, been on so many teams, won a championship, been in a couple of finals, he knows how to win. He can just teach someone like a Cade Cunningham. He can teach someone like a Jaden Ivey. Then you got to get someone who can teach a Jalen Duren, a James Wiseman, these younger guys. So that way when they get in those positions, they know what to do and what not to do. What play is going to work instead of turning the ball over at the end and now it's just another L. The Pistons got talent. They just need some veterans on that team so that way they can help your Cade Cunninghams, Jaden Ivies, Jalen Durans, James Wiseman, everybody on that team that's young. And they need to get better defensively. Because what I saw in the Pistons game versus the Raptors, they almost lost it, but they controlled the game. In Boston, they controlled the game. They were up by 21 at one point, but they were failing defensively late down the stretch in the game. And with the Rockets, they were only down by 2 points at one point. They were down by 4 at halftime. But Houston went on a big run in the third quarter from bad defense. Simple things that need to get fixed. Going on a 28-game losing streak, the longest losing streak in NBA history, that affects a player mentally and it affects the coach mentally. But the coach got to gather these guys and make these guys dig in deep. You saw it in the John Wall interview. When they were losing all of those games consecutively, John Wall said that his team felt as though, what's the point of even going to play these teams on the road if we're going to come back with the L? It's the same with the Pistons. After a certain amount of games, 1 game turns into 10 games. 10 games turns into 15 games. 15 games turns into 20 games. At some point in time, it's going to get to your mental. And it's going to be like, dang, every single time we go on the road, we know that we're finna lose. We know we're finna get blitzed. We play the best team in the NBA on the road. Man, we know we're finna get blitzed. And that was what was happening. But that's a mental thing. Monty Williams got to do something to gather these troops together and make them come out and play. Even though we're on a long losing streak, we can still win this game. That's how you got to get these guys. Are they the worst team in the league? Yes, they're the worst team in the league. They can beat a team like the Spurs, though. The Spurs are a couple of games ahead of them. They can beat a team like the Spurs. They can beat a team like the Wizards. They aren't that far behind those two teams. They're not. They just need some OGs on their team that know how to win games down the stretch instead of having someone like Alec Burks, who has been playing these past few games, and Bojan Bogdanovic as their OGs. They need to get some Jeff Greens on their team. A Fred VanVleet, just something, just to give y'all some names that know how to win games and can guide these younger guys like your Cade Cunninghams, like your Jalen Durans, Jaden Ivies, to win games late down the stretch. And another thing that they have to do is tighten up defensively. They be in most of the games until the team goes on a huge run and they blow the game wide open. Monty Williams has to fix that. That's a coaching thing. And if they get some guys next year that know how to win games and can teach these younger guys, I promise you they're not going to be as bad as 3-30 at this same point next year, the season. They're not. It was the same thing with the Rockets, and it will be the same thing with the Pistons. Monty Williams is a great coach. You can't take that away from him. He just won Coach of the Year. You can't take that away from him. He just got put in a dumpster fire first year, and now he just got to work with what he has. Just has to work with what he has. Hopefully get someone in the trade, and hopefully get someone in the draft. And get these guys some help, these young guys some help. Because they have talent on this team. It's just not like they just suck. They just got talent on their team, but they haven't been in certain situations. And they're going to fail each and every one of those times. But they have someone that know how to handle the rock late game. OG that know how to win, that has been in those moments more than Cade Cunningham, and can tighten up defensively. They'll be all right. They'll be all right. So great win for the Detroit Pistons, breaking the streak against the Toronto Raptors. I either had them beating Toronto after the trade that they did with New York, with OG Anunoby and Precious Achiuwa getting traded to the New York Knicks for Emmanuel Quickley and R.J. Barrett, along with the second-round pick, because I already knew R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley wasn't going to play. So if Emmanuel Quickley and R.J. Barrett wasn't going to play, the Pistons had a good shot on winning this game. I thought they were going to win this one, the one on the road against the Jazz, and the one against the Spurs at home. It was one of those three games, but I knew they wasn't going to beat the Rockets. But sure enough, after the trade, looks like the Pistons won the trade at the end of it because they end up getting the 2-point W, and everybody's happy. Everybody's eating Wingstop. Every Detroit Pistons fan, everyone living in Detroit is happy that they won. They're happy that the Lions are finna make the playoffs, and they're happy that the Detroit Pistons finally broke the very long losing streak that has been going on since November. Great W for the Detroit Pistons. Everybody in the world is really happy for you. So with that in mind, that is the end of this podcast episode. If y'all made it to the end of this podcast episode, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you get the latest updates on when I post a full podcast episode and a full Real Spill Wednesday. Love y'all with all of my heart. We're staying consistent all of 2024. We're at over 170 videos right now. I cannot wait to see what 2024 has in store, not only for me, but for y'all. Let me know what 2024 has installed for y'all as well. Hopefully, y'all have been having a happy new year. And with that in mind, I love each and every one of y'all. And y'all have a nice rest of y'all night.